And the attendees are filing in. So we're going to start with
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Conway. I'm the president and CEO of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to thank you for joining us today for our energy efficiency webinar. This is part of a long series that we have been partnering with the town of West Hartford to bring to our business community over the past several years, always looking for opportunities and solutions to support our local businesses. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Kristen Gorski. She is the town of West Hartford's Economic Development Coordinator, and she will be serving as moderator for today's discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Chris and Kate. Good morning, everyone. As Chris said, I am Kristen Gorski. I serve for the town of West Hartford as their Economic Development Coordinator, as a liaison between the town and its businesses. So very excited to be here today and serving as a moderator for this great panel. So before I introduce our panelists, I just wanted to recognize a couple of people who are in attendance today and certainly helped to make today's webinar possible. I just wanted to recognize a couple members from our Clean Energy Commission for the town of West Hartford, Bernie Pelletier, as well as Stephen Sack are both on here, and then also wanting to recognize my colleague, Catherine Deviney, who is our sustainability coordinator. Thank you so much for being here today and helping us to make this possible. So I am going to introduce our panelists that we are super excited and thankful to have here today. Prior to doing so, just a quick housekeeping note for today's energy efficiency webinar. We will go through brief presentations from Eversource, ESC, as well as the Connecticut Green Bank. If anybody has any questions, please put those into the Q&A or the chat. We will hold all questions until the end, but certainly we'll save some time at the end to be able to get your questions answered based on today's presentations. So I would like to thank and welcome our panelists today. So with us today from Eversource, we have Lauren DeSalvatore, who is the Associate Energy Efficiency Consultant at Eversource. From Environmental Systems Corporation, we have Jack Cunningham, the Director of Sales, Brendan Smith, the Solar Design and Development Expert, as well as from Connecticut Green Bank, we have Peter Ludwig, who is the Senior Manager for Market Engagement. So in order to kick off today's webinar, we are going to turn over to Lauren, who is going to give us a brief presentation from Eversource. Lauren?
Thank you, Kristen, for that intro. And I apologize to everybody. I do have a little bit of a cold, so I do sound like this. Awesome. So give me 1 second. So this is obviously the West Hartford Energy Efficiency webinar. Again, my name is Lauren DeSalvatore. I am with Eversource, and I'm really happy to be here today. You can go to the next slide, Kate. Awesome. So at Eversource and with Energize DT, we work with CNG, SCG, and UI, and the Energy Efficiency Board, Connecticut Green Bank, and the state. Our big goal is just to save money and to use clean energy. We like to pass on the savings onto the customer, and we love to just be able to move forward with clean energy. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of our agenda. We're going to go over everything. Next slide, please. Awesome. So about Eversource, we're here at Energy Efficiency. We're always looking to flush out as many opportunities as possible, giving the best and most comprehensive proposal possible to the customer. Have you ever thought about energy efficiency using measures at your business, from sink faucet aerators, from refrigeration, LED lights and lighting controls? We just really like to look at it as a comprehensive and as many measures as we can add in to save you money, save you energy, and to move forward that way. Next slide, please. Awesome. So I work on the Small Business Energy Advantage, or we call it SBEA, because we love acronyms. But the standard incentive offer that we have right now. So Small Business Energy Advantage, or SBEA, we are less than 1 million kWh annual usage. Those are considered the small business customers. It sounds like a lot, but it actually really isn't too much. So for small business, we have a tiered incentive offering. Depending on the scope, it can go up and down from there. It's a little on the confusing side, but we'll go over a simple part of it later. We do have 0% financing for up to 48 months. And as you can see, there's a little asterisk. It does depend on accounts carrying balances, late payments, or new accounts. But we do like to work with the customer to try to get them the best financing option available. We do have third-party financing if you don't qualify for Eversource, but we can definitely talk about that later. We do have a turnkey approach with qualified and vetted contractors. Next slide, please. So this is just a simple small business case study. This is actually from a restaurant in West Hartford. The bottom line of that, the total line, that's kind of where you would be looking. That's kind of the bottom line of it. So the cost of the project would be around $18,000. The savings would be 20,000 kWh per year with 175 CCF, which is like your gas usage. And then the incentive is around 11,000. And if you look at the line below it, it says their out-of-pocket investment of 7,000 was financed at 0% down and was paid back in under 2 years through annual savings. So it's a balancing act between the annual savings and also the incentive plus the payback. Next slide, please. So right now, we are running what we call the micro business offering parameters. So it's an 80% incentive on the total cost of the project, up to $16,000. We do offer 0% financing, and we're a little bit more lenient on that 0% financing than we are for the normal incentive. And it's $100,000 kWh yearly cap of usage. So we calculated it out, and it's about, if you're looking at your monthly electric bill, it would be about $1,500 per month or less, and that would be considered micro business. Next slide, please. So these are some of the eligible non-equipment measures for the micro business offering. So we don't allow what we call custom measures. So that would be considered new equipment. So if your, say your boiler has died and you need a new one, we do offer that through our program, but it wouldn't be considered part of the micro business offering. We're looking for those easy things that can be done for the small businesses, or actually the micro businesses. So these are some of them that, some of the offerings that we have. That we list off, and that would be on the proposals. And you as the customer don't have to actually identify these. We would be working with a contractor. So that way they could identify them and say, you know, this could be done, add this on here, and then we can get a better payback. Next slide, please. Awesome. So I'm not as familiar with this one, but this is the large commercial industrial program that we have. And they're just greater than the 1 million kWh. So some of you may fit into that criteria. It is a little confusing on this slide, but this is how the program works. The small business one is actually mirrored off of this, of the structure, but it is a little bit on the confusing side because it does change depending on which measures you add to the project. But again, the contractor and us at Eversource as EECs would be able to work with you and to explain to you, you know, the tiered project and what your measures actually mean for the project. You can flow to the next slide. This is a simple way to understand it. If you just think about it, the more measures that you add on, not necessarily the number of measures, but the type of measures are going to get you a better project. You can go to the next slide. Awesome. So this one is going to be programs that are run through our large business program. So I'm just going to go into depth about writing about them. So the retro commissioning or RCX is for buildings that are over 100,000 square feet and provides energy efficiency optimization for HVAC building management systems by evaluating and implementing enhanced control and operational strategies for customer facilities. This is direct digital control based building management systems, and they must be present. Energy use intensity typically above the industry benchmark. Again, this would be something that you would work with Eversource to try to come about. So next we have the technical assistance study. The purpose is to accurate and detailed information needed to decide and execute a project and for Eversource to offer financial incentives. The reimbursement is up to 50% of study cost for preferred vendors, 25% for non-preferred vendors, and full reimbursement once project is completed. And then the ideal customer would be already established specific energy measures that would like to pursue, but need some extra analysis or financial incentives to commit to the project. So then we have two programs that are run alongside the small business program and the large business program, but they're a little different. You may have used them once or twice, but we have the Commercial Industrial Express program, which is also called the Instant Rebate Program. Provides a rebate to utility customers after they install qualified equipment and submit an application. The customer pays full price at the time of sale and is reimbursed a set dollar amount based on their completed application. What we run alongside that is what we call the Commercial and Industrial Midstream Program, or the Midstream Rebate Program. This uses distributors to provide rebates to customers at the point of sale. The customer is not required to submit a full application and receives the item at a discounted rate at the time of purchase. The discount is due to an incentive paid by the utility once the sale information is collected and submitted. The distributor is asked to obtain the install site address at the time of sale. Next on the list is SEM, which is the Strategic Energy Management. So SEM applies the principles of continuous improvement to energy management to create a long-term approach to managing energy that fosters substantial long-term savings. Eversource provides process and consultation to guide customers through implementation of SEM at no cost to customers. If you have any follow-up questions to that, Paul Tangretti, who's not currently on this, is the person to contact. I have a list at the end of people to contact if you're interested in any of these programs. Next on the list is PRIME, which is Process Reengineering for Increased Manufacturing Efficiency. So the industrial and manufacturing focused process improvement program that assists companies with implementing lean manufacturing techniques. Companies will participate in a Kaizen event aimed to reduce waste, increase throughput, improve product quality, and save energy and money. Eversource covers 100% of the cost of the first 2 PRIME events and 50% cost of the following 2 PRIME events. EUA, or Energy Utilization Assessment, is the industrial and manufacturing focused energy assessment with a large emphasis on the facilities process. The assessment will provide facility historical data, equipment and facility energy savings analysis and estimated savings, estimated program incentives and payback, and estimated implementation costs. Eversource covers 50% of the cost of the study if the customer pursues the identified implementation measures in the EUA. Eversource will reimburse the customer with other half of the study cost. Customers will use a qualified EUA consultant. So those ones it's a little bit of a mouthful and it's a lot of information, but we'll send the slides out later. You can go to the next slide. Awesome. So here at Eversource, we're looking at the big picture if you haven't really gotten that yet. We're looking to add as many measure types as we can add onto a project, ranging from lighting, HVAC, controls, installation, and more. We'd love for you to contact us and give us a time to come out to your property and to be able to look around to see what we can best do to save you money and save you energy. You can go to the next slide. So wrapping up here are some links of interest. We have the General Energized CT Connecticut link. We have a new energy expert report where you fill out all of your information and it gives us a really good idea of what you're looking for in your project. The WISE use number is where you have questions or concerns. You can also set up a assessment that way if you don't have a qualified contractor you would like to work with. And then we also have some forms for the upstream and midstream rebate forms. Next slide. We're actually doing questions at the end. One more slide. And these are all the contact information. My contact information, the team lead for my team. We have Kyle Kalis, who is the LCI, so the Large Commercial and Industrial Program. He would be the contact for that. Mark Rubano, who is the Prime and EUA contact for Eversource. And then we have Paul Tangretti, who is the Retro Commissioning and SEM contact. Next slide. And that's all I have for Eversource. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Excellent presentation. We will now move to Environmental Systems Corp. So I will turn it over to Jack and Brendan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack Cunningham, and I have the pleasure and the honor of being the Director of Sales for the Energy Solutions Division at ESC. In case you don't know who we are, we're your neighbors here in West Hartford, located at 18 Jansen Court. You've probably seen our 100 or so trucks rolling around with the logo in the right-hand corner. There's a new addition to that. We are 50 years this year, And of course, we're extremely proud and excited about that. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to tell you briefly about our divisions, and then I'm going to go into the programs we play in. Then I'll go over the solar programs, and then I will talk about the new EV charging station programs. So if you saw those trucks rolling around or asked someone on the street, they would probably tell you we were a building automation company because that's what we're most known for. But we actually started out as an HVAC company, and we still have a thriving HVAC division. We have an audio visual division that does smart boards in schools and corporate boardrooms, things of that ilk. We have a life safety fire division, and we also have a security division. And I am in the energy solutions division, as I said. So I tend to speak at these events, and I'm often asked, what do we do? And I could say a lot of things. We do energy efficiency, we do sustainability, we do energy reduction. But what we're really doing is we are putting together financial models that allow you to leverage the utility incentives, the savings, and the low and no interest loans to set up either a no out of capital budget cost project, a small out of capital project cost, or if you don't decide to go through a loan at all, a discounted capital project. Next slide, please. So the first program we're in is the Business Energy Advantage Program, commonly known as the BEA. The BEA is for customers who are $1 million to $5 million kWh usage, and you're allowed to aggregate different locations within Eversource territory by a single owner. It's up to 70% incentives, and there is 0% on-bill financing available for 4 years. Next slide, please. So this is a real life example of what we did for a customer who was a manufacturer in the Danbury, Waterbury area. So we did LED lighting, steam pipe insulation, steam trap testing, and then we repaired those steam traps. So they were going to save $64,000 a year. They were going to get $364K was the cost of the total project. They were going to get $87K in incentives. But here's where the magic is, and hopefully you all got a matrix of the Eversource programs, which I had sent over. But by putting all these capital improvements that have energy reduction in them, in this scenario, they got an extra $158K, bringing it to this number. So they got I think it's 118. I'm having a little trouble seeing it. I apologize. K for 364K worth of energy efficiency work. That's a 1.8%, 1.8 year payback. And it's a 54% return on investment. So if anybody knows of anything that you can legally invest in the United States of America for 54% return on investment, please let me know at the end. I'm very interested in that. Next slide, please. The next program is the Energy Opportunity Program. So in this case, it's open to all electricity usage, although it tends to be the larger customers that use this program. And it's up to 65% incentive, and there's low interest off-bill financing available. Next slide, please. So this is for a customer that we did, this was a manufacturer in Northeastern Connecticut, and we did steam trap insulation, all new LED lighting, 2 brand new compressors. We also did a steam trap survey, steam trap repairs, and in this scenario, we switched them from oil to natural gas because the commodity savings was so great. So this was a 394K project. I believe they're getting 118K in incentive, but again, they're getting all these capital measures, new lighting, new compressors. And there's an additional 95K here, bringing it to this number. So they're getting for $179,000, they're getting this $394,000 worth of energy work, and it is a 59% return on investment. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the low interest loan programs that are available. I'm not going to get into detail on the interest rates, but in essence, typically the first $100,000 is at a lower interest rate, and then the rest of it is at a higher interest rate, and they merge the two together. And of course, that depends on what the interest rates are. But in this scenario, if you recall, the customer had to pay $179K is what they owed after incentive. So the monthly payment was going to be $7,747. The savings was $8,827. So they're actually making $1,080 every month, or $13,000 a year, until they pay back the loan for 24 months. Let me repeat that again. They are making $13,000 a year to get all those capital improvements. And in 24 months, they save the entire $105,000. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to skip the two CPACE projects, which are this slide and the next slide, just because we're lucky enough to have Peter Ludwig here. So if you could go to the next slide, and then the next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to go into solar. We'll let Peter, who's the expert, cover CPACE. So in Connecticut, there's been a bit of a shakeup in the solar programs. There's some new ones. And there's a new program, an NRES tariff program. And NRES stands for Non-Residential Renewable Energy Solutions. A renewable energy source earns a tariff income every time it produces 1 kWh of energy. It's the solar incentive program that gives you a monetary incentive to go solar. So depending on the size of the project, the tariff value is either predetermined by the administrators of the program, or the projects are selected based on a tariff bid price through an auction. Starting next year, there'll be 2 auctions for large and medium NRES tariff projects and 2 no bid applications for the small NRES. So there are 4 primary ways to get solar in Connecticut. The first slide you see before you is the direct purchase one, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You buy the solar array outright. So one of the benefits is you get a tax incentive of up to 26%. And I've seen some of these tax incentives, depending on the array size, they can be staggering. And the remaining cost of the system can be depreciated over time. And you immediately start receiving income from the solar production. Next slide, please. So this next one, you still own it, but you don't have the cash to put up. So you're financing it through the Green Bank. So still applies for the tax incentive. You still get to depreciate it, but the solar cost, system cost is offset by CPACE, and it's usually cash flow positive until you pay back the loan. Once you pay back that loan, again, you can sell it completely back to the grid by yourself. Next slide, please. This next one is one of the most popular ones, and particularly for small business. It's called the Power Purchase Agreement. And this is where a third party owns, operates, and maintains the solar system on either the ground, like the picture you see before you, your roof, or on a solar carport. And you agree to buy back the electricity at a discounted rate. It's usually lower, and sometimes it can be very low, a lot less, depending again on the solar array. Next slide, please. And then this is a brand new program. This is called the Roof Property Lease Program. Same idea in a sense, because a third party owns it, but you're not buying back any electricity. You're just renting your space where this solar power plant is going. It's sort of akin to cell tower, if you're familiar with cell tower rentals, as cell service was becoming a thing. Next slide, please. Okay, and now I'm going to go into the electric vehicle charging station. So the way this program works in Connecticut is they are offering you to buy 2 chargers, which comes with 4 heads and will allow you to charge 4 vehicles simultaneously. And the way the program works is they're going to pay for one of those chargers, and the rest of the incentive money goes towards the setup fee. So in what they are called baseline communities, the incentive is $20,000. And for underserved committees, it is $40,000. Now there's 3 levels of chargers. The fast chargers, which are the most expensive, they go for about $50,000. It's the same exact deal, except it's upped because of the cost of the chargers and the cost to get the electricity to the pedestals. So in this scenario, the baseline is $150K, and in underserved communities, it's $250K. Next slide, please.
Jack, I just wanted to let you know you're close to 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And so in this scenario, the case is, it was 26K, it was 18,000K incentive. And so again, they're paying for all of this work about what one charger costs. That's a 70% incentive. There are, next slide, I'm sorry, one more. So there's 3 potential increase ways to get money off these EV charging stations. You can you can get money by people charging at the stations. You can also use these charging stations for advertising income. Advertisers will pay you. And the third way, which is new, is carbon credits. The utility wants to be able to pull the electricity out of these chargers during brownout situations, which usually occurs, mid-July to late September. And my last slide is basically just my contact information. And I really just want to let everybody know we're here to help. And if you've looked into this before and maybe you didn't have a good feeling, you should continue to look into these things. There is a lot of money floating out there that you can take advantage of. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Jack. Certainly appreciate all of that great information. So next, our final panelist that I will turn it over to before we turn to Q&A, Peter Ludwig from the Connecticut Green Bank. Peter?
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you, Kristen and Kate and Chris and the Chamber of Commerce, and also to my fellow panelists, and especially to all of you who are on. I think it's amazing that we have 28 people on a webinar after being in webinar world for 2 years. Is, I think, a testament to the quality of the programs and the community in West Hartford business community's engagement. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Connecticut Green Bank, a couple of our programs and offerings, and then I'm going to do my best to close with a call to action, essentially. So would you please go to the next slide? This is my pretty brief agenda. I'll talk a little bit about what we do, who we are. We'll talk about CPACE a little bit. I think that will probably be the tool program that's most relevant. I will potentially, if we have time, I'll touch on, I'll sort of reinforce Jack and Brendan's comments about some non-debt solar financing products, just to kind of make sure that hits home. And then I will do my best, although I tend to be a little bit understated, I will do my best to get us fired up and ready to do these projects. So would you go to the next slide, please? So the Connecticut Green Bank's been around for just about 10 years, a little more than 10 years. And we're really created by the legislature to address our kind of economic development, environmental, and increasingly social equity goals across the state. I mean, I think we know that Connecticut has pretty aggressive energy efficiency goals and now decarbonization goals, but there's not enough, there's not enough grants and incentives for everybody to do this. So what we try to do is take private capital, it's basically take smaller amounts of public capital, use it to leverage private investment into our clean energy markets, and to make sure that we're creating cash flow for building owners and homeowners across the state. So would you go to the next slide, please? Just as a little bit of framing, we do work across different kind of sectors of the state. So we do a lot of work with local banks and contractors on low interest loans for heat pumps and solar for residential settings. On the right side, we have our investment solutions bucket of work, which includes our new Green Liberty bonds and our Green Liberty notes, which I'm happy to share follow-up information on. But that basically allows the average person to make investments in our green economy in denominations of as small as $100. So we're really trying to democratize investment in clean energy. And then today we're really sitting in this middle bucket, building solutions. So would you please, next slide, please. So we're going to talk about CPACE, and CPACE just really is an acronym that stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. It really, the main benefits are that we will only make a CPACE loan if we know that the project savings will pay for the loan over the lifetime. So we'll work with a group like ESC to say, hey, okay, you're going to do a boiler project and some lighting retrofits. We want to make sure there's enough savings over that 15 or 20-year loan to cover that initial investment. That's also a statutory requirement we have. We are, part of the state government. We're a quasi-state agency. We're not going anywhere. Your interests are our interests. So you know that working with the CPACE program is a good idea. And then, as with the other speakers, we're all about kind of helping you modernize your systems and reducing operating costs. And I'll also just say that CPACE is not a new program. I mean, it's been around for a few years. We have over 350 projects across the state, over 200 million in CPACE loans. So this is really a growing project. And to give you an idea of the range of projects, the Connecticut Green Bank will do a loan as small as $50,000 if we're needed to. But we've also seen, the biggest CPACE loan in the program's history was almost 14 million at the Sisters of St. Joseph of Chambéry in West Hartford at Park Road, and that was a kind of new construction project. So it really can fit a variety of situations. So please go to the next slide. So just to hit home the way it works, or just talk about the way it works a little bit, we're making financing for clean energy upgrades. We'll talk about some of what that can include in a second. The term can go out to 25 years. Typically it's 15 to 20 years. The financing is secured with a senior assessment. We call it a voluntary benefit assessment. It's very similar to a sewer lien that might be on a property. So it's very secure, and it allows these very long terms because it's so secure. And what's really nice about it is, hey, if you own a property and you want to do a project, but you don't want to be a long-term owner, then this assessment just transfers to the new property owner. And we've seen this happen many times. It's pretty seamless. So it's really designed for the commercial real estate market in that way. Next slide, please. So we can do a lot of different things, really. The key thing from our standpoint for CPACE is that we need to make sure that the retrofit, because the financing is secured to the building, we need to make sure that by statute that the measures we're underwriting are sort of what we call permanently affixed to the building. So we don't do things like, if there's a manufacturing facility with a lot of process equipment that might get moved from one plant to another, we tend to stay away from those because we can't really say that it complies with that rule that it's permanently affixed. But almost anything else that's related to building systems, whether it's a renewable system, energy system, like a water source heat pump, a geothermal system, lighting, all the things you see on the page will fit under CPACE. Next slide, please. So just give you a quick example of a case study, and this is a project where they had a sort of moderate-sized solar system and some lighting. And if you go to the next slide, it'll show a little more detail. And I think we're going to share the slide, so I'm not going to read every single line item, but it gives you an idea of the way they were able to leverage on a project that cost $1 million. They were able to leverage what was at the time the ZREC program, that was the state's former solar incentive program, and then also there were some utility incentives in here, ultimately to leverage almost $2 million in savings over the cost over the time of the project. So again, as Jack mentioned, that's a pretty good, in his case study, it's a pretty good return on investment, and we want to continue to help building owners figure out how to make these types of investments. So please go to the next slide. I wanted to touch quickly also on new construction. This is a sort of newer use for CPACE, and the idea is essentially in the middle, and this could also be a ground up new construction or kind of gut rehab repositioning. In the middle of this, you see your new construction capital stack with some senior debt, some equity, some mezzanine debt. We also, on the left, we see, okay, what we're actually doing is we're going to sort of displace more expensive money with CPACE money so that your overall weighted cost of capital is lower. And on the right, since the debt for CPACE is usually like cheaper than some secondary types of mezzanine debt. You could actually just fit more capital in your capital stack. So the way this program is designed, we don't have a lot of time to get into it now, but you can always follow up with me later. This program is designed as you work with Eversource or with us to create a building model that shows you're going to be more efficient than code, and then we can unlock a percentage of your overall construction costs to help you do that. So we're seeing this project pick up more and more steam. It had been a pilot for a couple of years, and now it's been sort of revamped, and we're really excited about it. So would you go next slide, please?
Peter,
So
just so you know, you're at about 9 minutes.
Great. So I'm going to just leave the power purchase agreement that Jack talked about. This is just a sort of another way of seeing it, a sort of visual way of looking at it. And I'll skip the next. Could you go to the next slide too? So I want to make sure we have question time. And this is also an example of how the roof lease works. And again, this is what Jack was referring to as very similar to Green Bank's going to basically pay you to use your roof to put a solar system up there. It's just pretty much that simple. And would you go next slide, please? So the question is, I mean, I feel like we've heard from Lauren at Eversource. They have technical assistance and incentives and 0% financing for 4 years. I mean, this is incredible. You've got the Green Bank that can come in and help provide capital for these projects over longer terms. You've got folks like Jack who can go out there and his team can tell you, I mean, well, where do I start? So I think that there's so much opportunity probably at all of your buildings, and the market is changing quickly. There are a lot of new things happening. The size of the solar program doubling. Eversource is rolling out new programs all the time. We're expecting a bill to be signed. Hopefully, we're crossing our fingers that would allow us to do resilience work with CPACE. So there's a lot of things that are constantly happening. And so as Jack mentioned, you might have looked into this in the past, but the landscape is ever changing. The path is sometimes not linear. We're always here to help kind of guide people. I also think that it's a really good idea. I think finding a contractor you like, who you trust, who can help you navigate this. I think Jack and ESC is an example of a great local contractor who has lots of technical chops and a really good understanding of how the programs work. But I know that there's a lot of skilled people around the state. So I think that we're here to help. I know Eversource is here to help. And ultimately, I think you want to be on the other side of this in a year or two, looking at your improved cash flow, your upgraded building, so that you can help tell the stories to your peers about what you did and how successful it was. And I think my contact information is on the next page.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. So before we turn over to some questions, and again, and feel free to enter those into the chat or the Q&A portion. We do have a couple that have come in. Certainly appreciate the really great presentations, and it's truly helpful, I think, especially to hear that there's actual businesses and properties in West Hartford, commercial properties, multifamily, Lauren, with your example about a restaurant in West Hartford, it's great to hear and see the incentives that they can take advantage of, and the fact that these projects are occurring with, people in our community. So this first question, Lauren, I believe is best directed to you. It's regarding the SBEA program. If I have a retail business or a restaurant, for example, can the contractors work around business hours so I'm not losing revenue?
That's a great question. You can absolutely work with the contractor to be able to arrange for that sort of schedule. I mean, that you would work directly with the contractor. We don't actually do the scheduling or anything like that. We let them do it in-house to work around their schedules and the labor flow that they have. So absolutely, you can definitely work with the contractors to try to do that. We've had contractors who have done schools who don't get to go out to site until, after 3 or 4 p.m. We've had contractors who do weekends. I mean, that won't help a restaurant if you're open on the weekend, but yeah, absolutely. You could definitely work with the contractors to be able to schedule that. Yeah.
Great. Jack, from ESC's perspective, do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, so I would say that I know all the contractors, I know them all, they all know us. I find it hard to believe that any contractor wouldn't be able to accommodate whatever your needs are for installation. I think they would be able to do that, including
Great.
us.
Great, thank you. If I want to rent out my roof, how many square feet would I need? So I believe that this is for solar.
Brendan?
So
Or
yeah,
Peter?
there's no minimum system size or minimum roof size, but generally speaking, the larger a solar PV system is, the better cost per watt you have. And so there are systems below a certain size for a particular roof that might be too costly, in which case there wouldn't be enough kind of in the project in order for there to be a favorable roof lease price. So generally speaking, the larger the system, probably the better roof lease price you'll get.
I just want to comment that, we can evaluate that, or any of the other solar people, and we can evaluate that fairly easily for you and work with Peter to figure that out at the Greenback. So.
Yeah, I was going to kind of echo Jack's comment that although it seems complicated to say, okay, well, there's CPACE, you could purchase it with cash, you could do a PPA, you could do a roof lease. Ultimately, a group like, someone like Brendan needs to come in, and I think probably because the solar, commercial solar contractors, these folks I know the best, are really good at understanding the programs. They're really good at explaining to you, kind of giving you pro formas for different options so that you can look at and say, okay, here's how the cash flow would look for a roof lease versus a PPA versus, CPACE. So that's a pretty standard part of their sales and project development process. So you're not left kind of trying to figure it all out yourself.
Great. So a second part to that question. So there is a question about the ability to put solar on land. So certainly, you have to work through any approvals or code within the community that you are located within. However, it would be great to understand, at least from ESC, from your perspective, how you would address the ability to place solar on land versus the roof for someone.
Brendan, do you want to tackle that one also?
Sure, yeah. So the incentive programs are somewhat complicated. So the short answer is, bring them to us to take a look at them and give you a free assessment. But yeah, there are a variety of different programs where you can kind of monetize your unused land with solar.
Great, thank you. And then a question about solar incentives. Are the solar incentives the same for new construction as for a retrofit upgrade?
Yes, generally speaking, they're the same. Kind of on our back end, there are some differences in the application process, but yeah, generally the incentives are the same.
Great. And then this next question, would love to hear from Lauren and Peter. Do you find that most retail and commercial businesses can really benefit beyond lighting? And also, if I am renting and leasing my space, am I boxed out of any of these programs?
Absolutely, there is definitely more positives to going beyond lighting. It's definitely something to add on to a project that helps incentive wise and also helps you, especially if you have long run hours. But absolutely, there is definitely positives to going beyond. Like I talked about the comprehensive projects, the tiers. So actually you go up in incentive wise, you get a better incentive the more types of measures that you add on. So if you add on pipe insulation, if you add on VFDs onto like a rooftop unit or something like that, if you add on, aerators that go on the sinks or spray valves or anything like that, adding onto the project absolutely makes it more beneficial to you. Gives you a better payback, gives you more incentive, that sort of thing. And as for if you are renting a space, absolutely, we can work with you. It's kind of whoever pays the bill because we do the on-bill financing. So we would definitely work with you. We even have people that work on our team that work with landlord-owned properties. So we can definitely work with you to try to get that a best incentive for you as a tenant and also for the landlord too.
And I'll just add the CPACE perspective on that. The sort of financing agreement with CPACE is typically with the building owner, with the property owner. So we would probably want to engage in a conversation with them pretty early on to make sure that this, there was some kind of alignment. So it's, CPACE is usually better for owner-occupied commercial buildings. It's not out of the realm of possibility that we could, talk to the owner of the building and figure something out, but it's, usually a more straightforward process if it's an owner-occupied facility.
Great. Just to piggyback on that, and I think Lauren, you had some of this in the case study, but maybe talking about some of the additional rebates and things like that that might be available for the purchasing of equipment. If you're a restaurant, refrigeration, things like that, it might be valuable just to understand, versus some of the traditional items that you had outlined, those types of rebates that might be available.
Absolutely. We do have the midstream and the upstream programs that I had listed in the presentation, and you can go back and reread them. But you can absolutely go onto the websites to fill out the applications to do that. And they are offered through those two programs. And with MeasureWise, you can add on for the small business program. I talked about two things. I talked about the standard incentive and then the micro business. So the micro business is not doing anything that we consider custom. So anything that's considered like new equipment. But we do actually run that through our standard incentive program. It's not like we limit anybody. And if you wanted to do a new boiler or something like that, we do allow that through our program. Absolutely. It's just not offered through that micro business program. So you would get the standard tiered incentive for that. And it depends on the equipment on what the incentive would be. So I can't give you like an exact of what it would be, but it would be based off of also what else is on the project. So if you add lighting, if you add something else. So absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. And then do nonprofits and churches fit into any of these programs? So meaning, we really focus more heavily on businesses and commercial, but if you are in that nonprofit category, does it make a difference? Can you take advantage of it? Do you work with any sort of churches or religious institutions?
I can take a stab at it first and just say that, yes, absolutely. Both for CPACE, it's actually often a really good tool for nonprofits who, might be sort of capital constrained or cash constrained. And so being able to access 100% of the project costs up front, is a great solution for them. And we've done, many, many different nonprofits over the years. And also the solar power purchase agreement and the roof lease are actually sort of best suited for nonprofits and other, municipal buildings, people who sort of don't have a tax liability. And so that's, part of the reason why those programs exist is for nonprofits who sort of can't take advantage of the federal tax credit, that 26% that Jack talked about, to still be able to go solar and reduce their bills.
Great, thank you. And then just as we're wrapping up towards the end of the hour, I think it would be really helpful for folks. I know that you all included your contact information in your presentations, and we will send that out to people along with the recording and the slides. But Peter, you had mentioned some of the new programs that are working their way through the current legislative session and how the landscape is ever changing. So as new programs or incentives become available, what's the best way from each of your perspectives for people to stay up to date on those incentives and make sure that they understand what's new and what they can take advantage of?
Oh, Lauren, you want to take a stab at that?
I was just going to say to go onto the Energize CT website. Also, too, my contact information will be in there. You can always reach out to me. and ask, what's going on right now. But also the Energize CT website, we try to update as frequently as we can. Also calling the WISE use number. They are up to date on whatever programs we're running, like the micro business that just started this year. So we have some new offerings. And also, Kristen, to answer your question before, Eversource does, we love the nonprofits, churches, those kind of things. We love to have those through. We love to have them through the micro business program. A lot of them don't have a lot of usage, so they fit perfectly within that micro business program. I actually have about 10 Jehovah Witnesses throughout the state that I've been working on right now with a vendor. So we actually really like to have those through the program. But yes, absolutely. If you're looking for any updates on anything, definitely check out the Energize CT website for anything for Eversource WISE, and then also to call the WISE use number that's listed in my presentation.
Yeah, that's great. And I think another thing is just to consider, having a relationship with a group like ESC, who is sort of has their ear to the ground. Because I think, as you can tell, Lauren's got a ton of amazing programs. The Green Bank has some great programs, and it's sometimes a lot to, it's kind of like you're on this trajectory with your building and you want to meet the programs, at the right time, and you don't want to kind of miss something or have to do all that homework yourself. So I think it's really worth having someone on your team who can help kind of negotiate those and navigate those. That's actually, I feel like when people contact the Green Bank, that's a lot of what I do at the front end. Is just, okay, you heard about CPACE, great, but what are you actually doing, or what are you trying to accomplish, and where do you need to go first, and based on sort of what the programs are and what the sort of policy climate is like. So thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with all those statements made by both Lauren and Peter. And, from our perspective, we're going to do an 8 to 12 page evaluation at no cost for people. So, we have people in place who constantly know about what's going on with Eversource. We're in meetings with Eversource and multiple other utilities every 2 weeks. So we're pretty up on what the programs are. And, during the evaluation, we'll be able to plug in what the best values are at the current time. So I hope that answer helps.
Excellent. Thank you all. So, I will just add to that. Certainly, in addition, feel free to always reach out to myself or the chamber if you all are interested in doing any sort of projects or upgrades, and 100% reach out to our panelists today to get the ball rolling. We are happy at the town or the chamber to help you navigate any of this and further explore all of the programs, and work with our panelists and the represented organizations today, as well as explore if there's anything else on the table that might be able to, you could take advantage of to make sure that you can move forward with these really great cost-saving projects and any sort of energy efficiency upgrades. So not seeing any additional questions coming in, I again wanted to recognize members of the Clean Energy Commission who are on here today, Steve, Bernie, and then my colleague, Catherine Deviney. Thank you so much for attending and helping with this. And the biggest thank you to our panelists. This was fantastic. We certainly appreciate you spending the morning with us. So Jack, Peter, Brendan, and Lauren, thank you so much for your knowledge and sharing that with us and being so accessible to our business community. And then definitely thank you to our partners, the Chamber of Commerce, for all that you do. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me or the Chamber. And again, certainly our panelists are accessible. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's super fun.
Awesome. Thanks for joining.
Bye.